I am a man with many enemies.
The elevator opens for no one.
The Boston Red Sox.
And plans on making me.
The mayor of Boston. The governor of Massachusetts.
I'm paralyzed into you.
Boston Globe.
And plans on making me.
It's a war.
And plans on making me.
We're going to battle it out.
We'll sit there.
Everyone looks like everyone.
My dick's so big doesn't even matter. He's 2 feet tall.
Nobody will get in trouble. Now, of course, everybody's going to kill each other after watching.
He's gonna fucking open his mouth, it'll fall right in.
You're too busy to accept it.
And it is going to be, when it's done, the most successful podcast in the history of mankind.
And we already met.
Listen, there's only one Minifan show.
Everyone looks like everyone.
It's right here.
And plans on making me. And plans on making me.
No protection.
And we are back for another Quantum Kirk. And John, do we want to bring in our special guest right off the rip here?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah! All right. Happy New Year, boys. Yeah, we are back. Happy New Year. This is an inception moment. We stole the name for this show off of the original, but he's not Quantum Week Chris anymore, so I feel like the name was up for grabs. He's Chris Klemmer now. Chris, thanks a lot for taking time out of your day to come on the show with us and do this. Seriously.
Oh, I'm excited. This is great. No, I love the name. I love the idea too. And it was like, I shouldn't say I like the idea a lot. And then going back and listening to this old episode made me love the idea because it was such a unique. It's such a unique portal in time because we're talking about things that are happening during COVID. So that was a really unique look. And then it was just fun kind of hearing this episode, which is a great episode.
Yeah, so that's honestly, Chris, it's the thing I love about doing this show. Me and Danny talk about all the time, and you're going to hear us. It's like it kind of brings you back to where you were when what was going on in your life. But before we get there, Danny, this is how we start off every show. Please drop the name of the episode and the date so everyone can try to listen along at some point before they listen to this.
Absolutely. So this episode is titled "Lambily Goes to War."
You said Apple.
Episode. Lambily Goes to War, and that's May 7th, 2020.
May 7th, 2020. So yes, we are like in the middle of the COVID stuff. Like we're really, really in it. We're in the deep shit. I think it's Mother's Day weekend. I think we find out, or Mother's Day's coming up. Yes. Because we're hit to a phone call later on that we will definitely get to that talks about that a little bit. So yeah, Chris, the biggest takeaway, and I'll tell you my experience from this, and then I'm going to let you go, is this was my first time on like Minifan Twitter, like really getting to even know the different names. I had been a fan of the show. I had a Twitter account, but I wasn't like super active. I was definitely a lurker. Like I was, watch everybody, and I hadn't been to like an event or anything like that yet. And then this night I was like, Brian Pleasant, Mike, Red, Quantum Week. These are all people that, Kirk mentions on the show, and you guys are in this war. So Chris, just explain the war. Go from there.
Yeah, so the war happened, and just so you know, too, from my perspective on this, because this kind of comes into play later, I think, a little bit, is that I was kind of new to the world, too. Like, yes. I listened to Kirk a ton on EEI. Like, I loved, Kirk and Callahan show. That's when I moved back to New Hampshire. It was basically the first week he started doing Kirk and Callahan. So John was not on the show. Dennis was gone at that point. Yep. So I listened to Kirk, but I wasn't super active on Twitter as far as with the show stuff. It wasn't until he went to Barstool and had the podcast come out every day, and then mix that with like just kind of, I feel like a lot of Twitter stuff kind of bubbled up around that time too and became more of a community. Back then you had people like TJ Hubbard and a bunch of other, Tim and Canton. There were some OGs that were there for sure, but it wasn't until like I'd say about maybe Mike and the Minifans kind of spurred some of that too. We started seeing people come out of the woodwork. So I'd only been in the world, I guess, if you want to call it that, for like 4 or 5 months. And we were doing Quantum Week.
Yeah, you were still penis head a lot. Like you weren't even really fully Quantum Week Chris here. You're still penis head.
I had never met Kirk. Carano had done the show a couple of times. I didn't go to Madawaska 1 because I had just gotten married. I was coming home from my honeymoon. So I had never been to an event either. So I never met any of these people. I never met any of you people or knew anybody really besides Carano. Carano and I were doing Quantum Week, and Carano went and did Kirk's show. We saw our numbers. Obviously, you go from, a couple dozen listeners to hundreds of listeners.
Boom.
So like, all right, we got to keep this going. And Carano's like, I want to make our social media more like controversial, more edgy. So he had a tweet out, and it basically they played the clip on this show of us talking about adult contemporary music, and the clip itself is pretty benign. It's what Carano posted, which is a video of Mariah Carey making kind of a dumb face, and it says, "Is this the face of stupid?" And before he put it out there, he's like, "Just so you know, I'm doing this. Are you okay with it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not really what I would do. It's not like the move I would go. Maybe I'm being too conservative, and maybe we do need to be more controversial to get more listeners." So I guess I wasn't on board with it entirely, but I definitely signed off on it. Carano puts that out, and then I don't know what happens. Obviously, people were searching Mariah's name on Twitter. Something happened, and one fan found it, started going at us. Carano goes back at them. I go back at them, and then next thing you know, the war was on. We had thousands of Mariah Carey fans just going at us. Then all the Minifans were going at it, and it was a legit like Kirk.
It was a war
in the episode. It's like the end of glory, and everyone. Yes, this is like, and that's what it felt
I think Kirk says, Red has got one leg left. Blind Prison Mike's got an eye poked out. Quantum Priest.
Penis head, just like
penis head, no torso. Yes, it was. I mean, I was in it that night. That's like the first night that I even like on Twitter was like active and like it was crazy. For anyone who was on Twitter that night, it was absolutely wild. And Blind Prison Mike, I think, had the tweet, and I think they said it on the show. He goes, "Rape is better than anything Mariah has ever written." And for anyone who doesn't know, if you're a new Kirk fan and you're finding the show here, listen to Rape. Maybe, John, this is a good spot to afterwards embed the song.
Right here.
Yeah, the Rape is, we talked about this pre-show. It's a phenomenal fucking song. But Blind Prison Mike wasn't wrong. Right, Danny?
No.
Danny.
No, it's a probably top 3 parody song, top 5.
Agreed.
Just incredibly well done, and just the lyrics, the music, just perfectly synced up. And obviously to just drop it out of context like that, where nobody knows what the fuck that means, and they think he's actually talking about literal rape.
Right.
That's going to kind of light a fuse.
It's such an insane tweet.
It's an insane tweet.
Can you imagine being like a neutral observer and seeing that tweet?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? But the song itself is fantastic. Like we were all talking about, Carano is so talented. Like with the lyrics, the music, like it's easy to forget how great he was at the parody songs.
Yes,
and that one might be his best. It's fantastic. And so I was getting really overwhelmed, and I put my phone in the kitchen, and we were in the living room. My wife and I were watching a movie, and you would have thought I was in a fucking club, because I had my notifications Twitter on, and it was like a strobe light, just like, because there was so many it was just so intense. And I had never been a part of anything like that. I had just got laid off like a month earlier, because I had worked in signage, in sports signage. And what my job was, my whole book of business was college sports teams and minor league baseball teams. And all at once, I had a book of business of $2 million. It went to zero literally overnight. So I got laid off. I didn't know when I'd be returning back to work. I had this podcast, and I put all my energy in. I hadn't really come to grasp with I had never been laid off before in my life. I'd worked in sales for 20 years before that, or 15, 18 years before that. I had always worked, and that's kind of how I define myself in a way, which I'm sure weird for Kirk listeners who know me as this unemployed guy. But up until that point, I had worked. That's kind of what I was and who I thought I was. And I didn't have a job. You couldn't go anywhere because of COVID, and I'm sure we all felt really lost, and anyone else who lost a job probably can relate. So I wasn't in a good headspace. This happens. The podcast getting crushed with 1-star reviews. And I'm like, oh my God.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Everything I touched turns to shit. And it was just like, I just felt so awful and bad on myself. And it was really, I deactivated my account that night, and I was just a mental wreck for like 3 days. And it wasn't really the Lambily stuff entirely. It was really honestly me coming to grips with losing my job. But it was the first time I ever handled any sort of I got a couple of death threats, and I knew they weren't really going to come to my house and kill me. I get that. But
that's still weird.
I've never encountered that before, and it was very strange. They got Carano's address. They're putting that on blast. Yep. Pictures of his house they must have got from Zillow or something. That's all on blast. And I'm like, I cannot handle this. I was very fragile at that point. Like I am out. So I tapped out. I even told Carano that night. Or the next morning, I'm like, I am not doing Quantum Week anymore. I'm done. I'm done with content. I'm done with everything. And Kirk had a great line in this episode. He said, if you can't find this funny, you need to get out of the business. And he's absolutely right. If you can't handle this, then you are not in the right spot. And I wasn't. And I don't think anyone knows this. Oh, John, you had a question, John? Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question. No, I didn't, but I was mic dropping because that was a
mic
good
dropping.
Yeah, I was
I'm sorry.
It was mic.
Kirk had a great thing that happened behind the scenes. I don't know if people know this or not.
No, go for it.
Kirk knew Carano because Carano had already worked.
Yep.
Carano had gone in a couple times.
He had filled in for Steve a couple times at that point, I think.
Yeah. Kirk was nice enough to reach out to Matt and ask how we were doing. And Kirk's like, hey, just a bit of advice. Like, give this thing like 3 days, it'll be over. People move on. He says, in the moment, it feels like it's everything. It's going to last forever. He's like, these things always have a shelf life of 3 days. I've been through this a bunch. I carry that wisdom with me every day, even today. So like a year ago, I wrote a blog about Albert Pujols. And I said that, I don't know, it's kind of fishy, this guy. Is this guy on steroids? I kind of just threw the question out there. Yeah. I got about 20 times more than I ever got with Mariah Carey. I was getting just, everyone's like, you come to St. Louis, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find you. Like, and obviously, I know no one really needs it and stuff. And because the Mariah situation, I could kind of look at it that way. But I kept telling myself, all right, yes, this sucks, whatever. It wasn't that bad, but like, whatever. 3 days. And sure enough, like fucking clockwork, man. And it's like, that's a guy that knows what he's doing. And that was a huge thing. I said, I think about it all the time. And I've even passed the advice on to people here. And I'm like, if they're kind of going through, I'm like, give something 3 days. Typically, it kind of works itself out. As long as there isn't like another wave of it to hit, it kind of just peters out. And that is, like I said, that is the kind of great wisdom that he can provide because he's been through the real shit before, realer shit than I've ever been through. With the Aaron Andrews and everything else. Just think about battling the Globe and battling the Red Sox, two giant entities in Boston, and you can kind of come out of it and be okay. And it's like, all right, and that really helped me. And it's something that guides me, I said, all the time. But that was something I really want to make sure I got on the show today because it was really important advice.
Yeah, no, and I don't think I certainly didn't know that. I don't think you had said that publicly before, so thank you. I guess I would say is, for people that are listening is, you deactivated your Twitter. Like, I think a lot of people in the world at that moment were down on Quantum Week Chris. Like, and Matt just stayed and fought. So it's kind of crazy to see where we are now. No offense to Matt. Like, I like Matt. I never had an issue with Matt, but, he kind of has gone away and all that. I know, John. And he's gone away and, like, you got a job at Barstool. So it's kind of crazy how that ended up working out. And, it was re-listening to this, and like I said, you deactivated, and Matt stayed and fought. What changed? What changed with Matt? And like he just never took that advice of the 3-day thing. Like, what do you like? No, if you don't mind me asking, I don't want you to speak for him, but No,
I mean, I'll give you my side of it or what I think happened.
Sure.
So one thing we have to get across. I know John poo-pooed Matt. Matt is, and I know Matt and John don't get along. They're never going to get along. That's fine.
It's fine.
Okay. But Matt has been a great friend to me since we met 10 years ago. Like Matt's just a good person. I know some people don't like him in the universe, some people do.
It is what it is.
For me, whatever it's worth, character-wise, he's a good person. And I'll tell you what, man, he was a great friend through this. So like I told him, like, I can't do the podcast anymore. And I'm like, I'm really in a rough spot. He knew I'd lost my job. He knew I was kind of going through it. He came to my house, him and his wife, like we all just kind of like hung out. And he was very much like never pressured me into doing the show. Never pressured me, never told me that I was being weak. I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm kind of leaving you holding this bag of shit. You're taking all these shots. I tapped out. I couldn't. I had to have a break. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And he never once held it over my head. Years later, a year later, we're doing Quantum Week, whatever. He never was like, oh, remember the time he would never throw it back in my face ever. And that speaks to someone like Matt and I are
it's commendable.
So friendly today. He's living in Florida now. He's far away, but like we still text all the time. Like he is a good person who was a great friend when I really needed it. And that's a big reason why I kept doing content. It was like, all right, I can go do it with Matt. I know Matt. Matt's been good to me. I'll do another episode. It's like, oh, this is actually pretty fun. Let's keep doing it. And then
you just kept having fun. Yeah.
It just kept being fun. Right. Not all the time. Sometimes like the online stuff was tough. And I think with Matt, where Matt's is very principled. He's the most principled person I ever met. And that's what kind of carried him here was he knew that he was right. He knew he didn't do anything wrong. Like, all right, you think Mariah Carey is stupid? All right. Some people can agree, some people can disagree. We don't need to send death threats. That's stupid. So like Matt always kind of was on the right side of it. And I think and I know Matt knew that I agree with him. I may have been a pussy, but I agree with him. I think it's when he holds a stand and then people might disagree with him that he knows that he's absolutely right. Whether he is or he isn't, that's how he feels. he has a hard time kind of being flexible at that point. But I will say though, like during this whole thing, man, Matt could not have been a better friend. Like he
he was going at it with them. So the best thing about this episode, if we bring it back to the episode, is Kirk like slept through all this. I mean, this was like a late night thing, Klemmer, if you remember.
Dude, it went
1, 2 in the morning.
Oh, I'd even take the over, like later than that. And it started at like maybe 7:30, because we probably tweet out at like 7. My opinion didn't find it until like 7:38. And the war didn't start until 9:30, 10.
Yep. So Kirk says he wakes up and he's like going through his phone and he doesn't even know how to piece it together. He's like, so hold on. The Lambily Mariah Carey fans and Penis Head and Closet Face is what he called you.
It's like he woke up at 10:30 a.m. on 9/11.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Danny. Thank you, Danny.
It's
a great line. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like Danny, I want your perspective. Do you remember this at all? How deep into the show were you? Were you on Twitter? Where were you during all this?
Yeah, I was on Twitter, and I think this was a night. I think I actually went to bed relatively early too. And I remember at some point checking in, maybe in the middle of the night, like woke up, looked at my phone, made that mistake. And I was also extremely confused. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because I was always, or whenever I started listening to Chris and Matt's show, to Quantum Week, I was always a big fan of that. I really enjoyed that show. And so I think I don't know if I had actually listened to that episode yet. Because I remember I would skip around a lot with your show, Chris, because especially like if I watched a movie, I love to watch a movie and then go listen to your show that referenced that movie. So there was enough of a catalog when I started listening to your podcast. It was great because you guys always offered some behind the scenes, little tidbits about the movies, and I always really enjoyed that. But so I don't think I'd listened to this specific episode. So it just made it very confusing because I think it took me a while to even get back to Matt's original tweet before I could sort of figure out what the whole impetus for all this was. But I remember being a little confused as well, but then totally into it. I mean, once this episode, once the Kirk episode dropped, it was really fun to go back and kind of catch up on all this and figure out what the fuck was happening.
Yeah, and they were a crazy bunch, man. Like those people really, like, we take shit serious. People call Minifans crazy. I'm sorry, they might have won that war. Like I know people say we won that. I don't think so.
I think they did. I think when I'm sure Dave will get to the very last little epilogue of this episode.
Yes.
I think they do. The Lambily delivers the final kind of death blow. But I will say real quick, Chris, too. Matt definitely defended you in this episode as well. When they called him up, he specifically said, because they called it out. They're like, Chris has kind of gone away. What's going on here? And he said, no, this is cool. I've got this. This is my battle.
Yeah.
Real quick, let me cut it. This all came down to that Twitter poll, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So
this is almost like a two-parter.
It was a
the next
two-part
episode they had on that. I think was it Nathan the Diamond?
They had a Lambily. They had someone on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And then so that was the next episode, I believe. And then they put out a poll. I forget who put it. Do you remember who put it out?
So one of the Lambily people put out a poll. The Minifans were winning. Then something happened, and it was a huge shift. And I think Big Cat retweeted.
That's what it was. The Minifans were winning. Then Mariah took over, and then at the last minute, Dan retweeted it, and then Kirk won, and that was the end of the war. They really did
that interview winning the war too. So it was like, of course, they get the fuck in.
So Big Cat for the win.
Yes, it was. And someone's like, "How did this happen?" And Dan just simply replied, "I have 1 million followers." It was a great mic drop moment. And
boom.
I think I was off. I know I didn't reactivate my account again for like a week. Like I took some time, and then I haven't deactivated it since. I don't think I will again. But it was just honestly like I think it's like it's important for people to understand. Like people like. It's very overwhelming to jump in the content game, or at least it was for me. Maybe it's me thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm not like wired that way initially, and I do worry about a lot of stuff. I do get anxious about stuff, but I don't know if other people like John. I guess my question kind of goes to you a little bit. Like you've been in the world a while, so maybe it's a little bit different. But like you jump in the producer race, all of a sudden you have people at Barstool HQ who are very interested in this producer race. Like. I think you handle this kind of shit better than I do initially anyway. I think you have kind of a thicker, I don't say thicker skin, but like thicker, like you can take blows easier than I can, I think, with some stuff.
Like when I started, like my first show doing this stuff, it was on Kirk's network. So first of all, you're in a breeding ground of just being hated upon. So it's like you're getting the hard crash course of that. But like me and BA always took the big cat like philosophy of like, we're here to laugh, man. So every negative thing you just laugh at harder. And it's like, I mean, we built GVE on that fucking philosophy.
It's just the right attitude to having content. I think. If you can have fun with it, that's contagious. If you're miserable, you're feeling down. I've been there. Christ, when I first started Barstool, I was very low. I was like, I think I like 16 pounds less than I weigh now. Like, and I'm not very big right now, obviously. Like I was just really down. I felt really lost. And then that kind of translates on. It's almost like you can't.
The time that matters the most is what you're saying now is when you're making content that you are making an original piece of content and you're putting it out and you're like, I hope the people like it. Those same haters show up then too. So it's like when you're in your most delicate point.
Yes.
Because you just want this to be good. And you know, even if they liked it, they're just going to talk shit. But it's like you're in every one of those comments. Even me, like I have to trust me. I don't care about one of them, but I'll at least try to say something witty back to them. And even that's being sensitive, kind of.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just trying.
We're humans. We're all sensitive to a fucking point. I mean, it is what it is, you know. Now, and Chris, I will say this. I did not know that you had like lost your job. And this was like your first foray into content other than, I mean, Monkey Boy and New Hampshire Cast, correct?
The real pro shit.
Improv in New York, you know, I've done some improv for like, I don't know, about a decade, but that's very much like in the moment. Like you do it, people see it, they like it, they don't like it, whatever, and it's gone.
Not a Twitter mob coming at you.
Right. And then I did a show about New Hampshire Cast, and that was fun, but it had a very small niche, you know, at one point I think we had like 1,000 listeners for like certain episodes. Those are like our high points. You're like, all right, great, which is still pretty good for a podcast. But like, but it was
humble brag.
Like, but it was never a juggernaut. It was just me and my friend just doing.
No one's coming at you being like, "Fuck New Hampshire, bro. I hate New Hampshire."
No. but you know, like I said, I put out a movie. I put out a blog yesterday, like top 10 living actors. And you have, you know, luckily it did pretty well. A lot of people read it, but when that happens, it means a lot of people are going to hate it, and you get tons of shit. Like, eventually, you don't care anymore about that. You realize, it almost becomes like white noise. Doesn't bother you anymore. But man, like in 2020 in May, it bothered the fuck out of me. Like I was really lost. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know the right way to do it. It was so new to me. There's no handbook for this shit. And I was fragile as it was, losing my job. I was a mess. I had to deactivate it. If I didn't deactivate the account, like, I don't know what I had to take a break. And
that's kind of, you wouldn't be where you are. That's kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's
crazy.
But like I said, luckily I'm also the luckiest guy in the world that I'm here. Like it's insane that the breaks, like that's all ridiculous and silly. But like, if I wouldn't be able to even do content at all, if like Matt hadn't helped me, if Kirk hadn't given that advice, like those kind of things, like I wouldn't have been able to do like a small independent podcast anymore. Like that's how
this was a seminal moment for you.
Damn,
it was a huge deal. It was a very.
I didn't realize there was so much history here.
It was a very big deal, like emotionally. It also like helped me like, come to grips with not being in sales anymore and like not having my typical paycheck coming in or whatever it was. Like it, and you know, my wife was great too. She was super supportive and. Like I was fucking lost for like a month, man. Like it was, and then I got lost again when I came here, like for like 3 months. That summer of the summer of what year is it? 2022. Whenever I got this job, I was lost. Like the Minifans were mad at me. I was
Wilbur happened.
I didn't know what content even to put out. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any friends yet. I didn't know one in the office. I felt so lost.
It's good to see that you leaned in, like how you leaned into the lights, camera, Barstool guys, the yak guy. Like that just shows that Barstool is willing and open to take in anybody, you know, and
who was great
and project them to the way they want, you know.
Nick and KP,
go ahead, Chris.
And a lot of I'm leaving guys out. There were a ton of guys that were like, "Oh, come do crosswords with us." And I'm like, "All right." Like I felt like the new kid, and like I felt like I just moved to like 6th grade. And I felt like I just moved somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, the cool kids want me to do crosswords. I'll do that, sure." Like Tommy was great with me, and then you build friends that way. But it takes a while, you know. But I'm in a new city. We just sold our fucking house. I'm here. I was just completely lost. For 3 months.
And then, to be honest, I know, like, whatever, we're in a good spot now, but, like, you know, you got booed out of the Wilbur. That could not have been, like, a fun time and then Danny, I gotta ask the question.
That didn't bother me at all. What bothered me what bothered me was Kirk was upset I was there. That that made me so sad. Because like I thought it was like I really and Kirk, we kind of disagree on
we've rehashed it, yeah.
And like, whether he overreacted or whether I definitely made some mistakes. I shouldn't. I worded wrong about the NBA Finals game. I could have scheduled that differently. I can understand how it appears disrespectful, all that stuff. So I get it, but like I really didn't, and I certainly had no ill intention. So I went. He's like, "Oh, Dave said Kirk wants to see you backstage." I said, "Oh, all right." I went. I didn't really think I was gonna get. I was like, "Oh, all right, man." My attitude was like he went to my Quantum League show. I love going to his shows. I'll go to this show. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, you were a fan. You were a fan.
Pretty naive, right? And it was at that moment. I think he even said it on the show, like, "You're not a fan anymore. Like, you can't do that." And I'm like, because you bring attention to yourself. I'm like, you know what? He's right. If I'm getting a paycheck from this company, I'm not a fan anymore, and I have to look at it differently. And that was another like. Maybe people are watching and go, wow, Chris is fucking dumb. Kirk has to tell him what to do, give him this advice, and maybe that's true. I don't know, but like it's hard for me. This is not like an obvious road, obviously, and I'm sure I'll fuck up going down the road. But I definitely feel like so much more comfortable here that I know people, and I'm content. I'm in my apartment, like I'm settled now. But man, the reason I keep going back to me going Barstool is because those same feelings I had then were the feelings I had this night at the Lambily stuff.
Yeah. So, Chris, I have one question.
I'm going to make one comment on that.
Go ahead, Danny. Go ahead, Danny.
So I just wanted to say real quick, Chris, on the Wilbur part, I got to say, I know that was tough, and I think people really felt for you. I know that was the look on your face, that emotion when Kirk was yelling at you it was kind of tough to see. The fact that there was a camera right there, though, did end up being pretty premium content in the end. But at the time, it could not have felt great.
That was the Soli. And he was a guy I met at Idaho who I got along really well with. And he was there. And then he took me outside to interview me. And he wanted to see the text that Dave sent me. And I'm like, I'm not showing you those. And he goes, you're in the content job. I said, I don't reveal text. So then I guess I won't be in the job for long, but I will not. Yeah. He wanted me to pull up my phone and show the text. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. But I give Fasoli credit for asking the question. Because
he had to ask the question. And the fact you stuck with it from there, because I mean that you could have just quit at that point. I mean, I don't think anybody would blame you to say, you know what?
Like we sold our house. Like, you know what I mean? Like
you were all in.
Like, fuck this, I'm out. My wife's like, yeah, we can't. We just fucking moved here. We can't quit. Like we took this leap together. You got to at least finish out the year of your contract. And I was like, all right. And then. Finally, December and January, I got more comfortable. But man, that summer was rough. And this time period with the Lambily stuff was rough for me.
So, do you still read the comments on your blogs?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes if it's like most of the time I do. Yeah, because sometimes it's good. It's good. I like to know what people think. If it's like someone just hating to hate, I'll just get right by it. But sometimes people have interesting points. Sometimes people have I think the comments in the blog, at least for me, I can only speak for me, are pretty fair. Now, if someone's like, this is dumb, I disagree with it. It's like, all right, well, that's your opinion. It doesn't mean my opinion is dumb. That's fine. But sometimes people have really good conversations and stuff. I actually don't mind the blog comments,
and I think you're one of the bloggers. I think that people do tend to have more thoughtful responses because you do interact with that a little bit. I think the people they know never read the comments or just never acknowledge them. I think sometimes it's more of a knee jerk, you suck or whatever.
Everyone has to do what's good for them. Like I kind of get that. I don't mind it, but like I said, I don't mind it because I'm comfortable now. If we go back to the Lambily stuff, I deactivated my fucking Twitter account. You think I can handle reading comments? Obviously not.
So, Chris, one question before we keep going. Is adult contemporary music still for stupid people?
I'll keep saying it. I think it depends on what era we're talking about. I enjoy, the older I get, maybe I'm getting dumber. I do enjoy adult contemporary music a little more.
Me too, man. Yeah, you too.
I mean, but the 70s and 80s stuff, I think, is pretty solid. I don't love Celine Dion. I don't love most of Mariah Carey's music. I don't love all of that stuff. It's just not for me. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't hear a song at a supermarket that 20 years ago, I would have been put my fist through a wall. And now I'm humming along while I get my Wonder Bread. So it's definitely
I'll tell you what, Kirk opened this show with The Power of Love, and that's a banger. I'm sorry. Power of Love's a fucking banger. Yeah, that's an absolute fucking banger. All right, so let's get back into the episode a little bit here. So Matt was more into the fight. Can you tell us about the 1-star reviews? They went at your show so goddamn hard. How many 1-star reviews did you get? Do you remember?
I honestly have no memory. I know it got really low, and then I think the next episode, Kirk said, "Hey, do these guys a solid, give them a 5-star," and then we bounced back up again. We never. And it sucks because they were like kind of there for a while. Matt actually went to Apple about trying to get some of them down, and like, which I get because they hadn't listened to the like. That's the thing that's like I think isn't fair. I think Spotify has a rule now we have to listen to the show to.
You have to listen. Yeah,
which seems fair. Like I don't know if that's the fairest way to do it, but I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like I put a lot of value in the rating, and then like probably way too much because I had nothing else going on in my life. I just got fucking laid off, so I'm like, oh, this rating means everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So, I mean, does it matter as much? I don't know. I mean, now we've reached a part of the world where, like, our podcast dying. Like, here at Barstool, they tell us all the time, do more, like, short-form content. Like, do more stuff for TikTok. That's where the media is going now. So, I honestly, did it ever matter? I don't know. I know if you go under a star, like, Apple can delist you, but we were never really at risk of that. So, that we were never really at risk of.
All right, Danny, any questions for Chris on that before we move to any other parts of the episode? Because there's a lot more stuff to get to.
No, let's keep going. I've got more questions, but it goes with stuff later on.
All right, fantastic. So let's get into like the middle part that isn't about the Lambily. I do want to touch on this because if you listen to today's show, Kirk actually brought up Jason Whitlock. We talked about the Jason Whitlock, Katie Nolan stuff, and then his whole ratio. And Jason Whitlock was on this episode. He had an article about LeBron and Michael Jordan. So I just found it interesting that me and Danny say this all the time on the show, Chris. Time is a flat circle in the Minifan world because it seems like we re-listen to an episode and it's like something pops up that's still somewhat relevant today. So they were talking a lot about now George Floyd hadn't happened yet.
That's
Am I correct?
Right.
So this was interesting
Ahmaud
to
Arbery
listen to.
just happened.
Okay, so that's what they were talking about, and LeBron had issued a statement. And Michael Jordan wasn't, a political enough. And Whitlock, I think first that Kirk was killing him, but then kind of took his side. Yes. So I guess, Danny, Chris, where are you guys at this time with like everything with the world and stuff? And like, Danny, were you laid off? John, where were you guys? Are you guys still working at this point?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to still have my job at that point. And I know I've brought it up in the episode a million times, and I know I'm the first one ever have a kid. But my wife and I had our first in March of 2020. So our whole world changed. It did 2 180s and back again. And so at this point, I remember just not getting a lot of sleep in general, was on lockdown, still had my job. My wife still had her job. She was working at Mass General, although she was on maternity leave at the time. But so the whole world was just, it was already really different, but then throw just this screaming baby on top of everything. And I didn't know what the fuck was happening. So I was really living my life through KMS, as pathetic as that might sound. I think I might not be the only one. I lived and died with the show because this was my, I was working as much as I could, but even my job, because, I work in medical sales. So there wasn't shit going on with that at that time. We were doing what we could from the marketing side, reconstituting content, doing a lot of webinars, just using stuff that had been recorded, trying to do stuff remotely, just like everybody else at that point. But I needed some kind of a release because I couldn't go anywhere. And I was, dealing with a kid and whatever. So, between Twitter and KMS and, Quantum
So
Leap,
this is pre YouTube. This is pre YouTube too. So like when the show would drop, right? Like everyone, I think we're all in the same boat. When that show,
11
like,
a.m.
you're waiting.
Yeah.
You're waiting for that fucking show to drop, too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge. Like, so every little thing. And then again, because the Ahmaud Arbery thing had just happened in February, this is now May. And then, we're just weeks away from George Floyd. So you've got all these outside tensions really just starting to swirl and become this, a whole nother maelstrom of ridiculousness.
People, we're all in the same boat. We all would our whole day kind of revolved around
me.
Because this is going to be.
I was unemployed, Chris. So yes, 100% revolved around KMS.
And and it was COVID. That's anyone who's a Kirk fan after COVID probably will never really understand because it was the only entertainment. I felt like it was the only. I know there were other shows going on, but I felt like Kirk's show, because Kirk's so good at being able to talk about such a variety of topics, that you got a fresh, interesting show that he was able also to navigate wisely by having it be more about his world when the real world was shut down. So that's what people are always like, why Kirk's audience is so fervent, why? And I think obviously a big part of it is his talent, but a big part of it is his talent during COVID, that he was able to basically invent a show and have it go out with oftentimes nothing to talk about. They had no topics. And he was able to create, things like Colin, like that. I know you guys just talked about it, but like that had happened just a week earlier than this.
Yep.
And like, think about all the stuff that he's putting out in this time when everyone's watching fucking like
the network
Tiger.
was made.
Like,
I mean, like we started, the network was made. So all those shows started. Like, I mean, if I could give you where I was at.
Please.
So up until this time, I was basically sales and management, right? COVID hits, I get a big severance pack. I worked for Comcast at that time, got a big severance package. So I'm sitting on my ass and my girlfriend's going to PA school, which means 16 hours a day she's studying. So legit, I was watching Kirk that whole time and like really kind of waiting to jump into the whole Twitter thing. I was already jumped into Twitter, but then they announced that this fucking network is going to happen, and fucking lo and behold, me and BA start a show. And like, I never edited, like I edited video when I was a kid, but I took this time I had now because of COVID sitting on my ass. My girlfriend's next to me with her head in a book, and I taught myself all Adobe. I taught myself Premiere Pro. I taught myself how to make clips. So like, and now I have a job in that industry. So this is a huge time for me because I completely shifted my life into a whole new industry where I am now working in media, and I work for an agency, a band agency. So, and I took the skills I learned because I was on the Kirk Minahan network and transformed it into that. So it's like a huge time for me. It's like, it was life changing.
Yeah, and Chris, I think you brought up a great point that I don't think really has been like it's said we've talked about it on the show, but I think you put it in a good way that I've never really thought about. I'm not saying that if you're not a fan after COVID, like you're not a real fan. Like I don't want to do that. Like, because then people will say if you didn't listen when he was on EI, you're not a real fan. So I don't want to do any of that. But I will say, I think the summer of 2020, that COVID summer, like he went from the Lambily, this whole nonsense with you and Matt, to like a topic about, who you said, Danny. I can't say his name correctly, and I don't want to fuck it up. Say his name for me, Danny. Sorry.
Ahmad Aubrey.
Thank you very much. And like he talked about that in a smart way. Right. So you could have the fucking around that we did with you, have a conversation about that, and then take phone calls at the end. And I think that, Chris, you're right. With like no topics, he would make this world where you were just waiting for it. And like my whole day revolved around it. And I think a lot of people were unemployed at the time. And I think you're right, Chris. If you were a fan, like if you really got into the show that summer, which I think we all did, I think you're just connected for like kind of, I don't want to say life, but like you understand why this fan base is so passionate at that point. So that's a great point by you.
And like, so
we were in Discord servers till 3 a.m. talking to just Kirk. What I mean? It's because we had no one else to talk to.
No one else to talk to.
I mean, those those friendships I still have. Like I do a show with Jay still. He was in those. You know what I mean? So it's like,
sorry.
This show connected people when no one could be connected.
John, you were going live 5 days a week for a while.
Yeah, I was going live 5 days a week, building Legos just because I have fucking nothing.
Yeah. So go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
The other thing too is, the show could handle these political topics, like you said, so eloquently. So and so interestingly. So like, yeah, you can listen to Jerry's show and get the same fucking one side, or I could put on MSNBC. But the nice about Kirk's show was like you never really knew how he was going to take an issue. Like he came at it from a unique element, and that's what made the show also so interesting. Oh, what does this guy think, as opposed to knowing what you're going to hear before you hear it. But it is interesting. I did make a note of this. Steve predicted the racial tensions getting worse that summer. And this is before George Floyd. Yep. Steve nailed it with that stuff.
Fucking Steve.
His early COVID predictions were, I wish I put money on them. Like I'd be the
what? He fucking was wicked wrong. He said we were all going to die.
His early predictions were dead on. His early predictions, he said,
first said we're all going to die. Then he said,
yeah, he did
after a little bit. Yeah,
it said like
he's like 40% of the world's population is going to be wiped out. I think is what he said at one point.
You know how you, David, you know how you talked about how like it's like a flat circle. I had another one of those moments listening to Kevin Spacey. Like Kevin Spacey's still doing the Frank Underwood
thing. The Tucker Carlson thing. Yeah, last week. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The same fucking thing.
Yeah, you're very good call.
And this is a small. I just want to throw one more note too. It's a small thing.
Go ahead.
Mayo, I guess, thought that he could do Mike's job.
Yeah.
I mean, Mayo, to his credit, he has gone in and sat in that chair. But if you listen to this episode, it's really interesting to hear Mike. Because Mike is always really funny, always really sharp, always the best sidekick Kirk's ever had. No question there. but he's more. You do hear how much more sensitive he is and how much more on edge he is than he is now. You can hear he's so much more comfortable now. So he has the same timing, the same comedy, but if you take away the sensitivity, that's where you get like modern Mike.
Blind school. We call it.
And so, Chris, we say it on this show all the time. It's pre fencing Mike and post fencing Mike.
That's it.
That's what we call it. Like BC and AD.
It's really interesting because, like you said, that he's always good at the job. He's always a very good sidekick.
Yep.
But that you heard that like that bite, that edge he has. Where on the flip side, I feel like Kirk is way more patient with callers than he is now. I don't say he's impatient now, but he would give people a long leash, a very long leash.
Yeah, Adam the Jew has like a half-hour call.
Oh,
yeah, this is Adam the Jew. It's like a main caller at this point. It used to drive me crazy. I was like, please abort this. I don't even think Steve is doing abortions yet. But I just remember, I mean, no hate towards Adam. I mean, I don't want to be labeled. I know Adam goes off the rails sometimes. So, Adam, this has nothing to do with, the yarmulke or anything. You're just very boring on the show.
You're boring.
Just very boring.
I didn't mind Adam's call here. I like Adam a lot.
I do too. His calls were horrid. Stop.
But like, everyone has their call. Like some people, I remember like Sheldon would call for half an hour.
Another brutal caller. Sheldon. So oh my God.
Sheldon, I didn't, because Sheldon came
sweetheart of a guy. Sweetheart of a guy.
Chris visiting Nurse Island sometimes would be like, all right, like,
oh yeah.
But then again, it's like part of me was like, all right, I don't want to hear this guy anymore. But then part of me is like, I don't want the show to end because I have nothing else the rest of my day. So,
right.
So Klemmer, I agree with you there. There's one caller now that I think fits into what those guys do, and Kirk lets him go, even though it's hard every time. Is the Boston Radio Watch guy?
Oh, I made a clip for it. Dude, I never knew he was the hello guy. And then
I didn't know that either.
And then he goes into Boston Radio Watch guy. I made a clip where it's like how to be a good caller, and it's the first part of his call, and then how to be a bad caller. It's the second part.
Yeah,
I don't so get it. Like I don't get.
Nobody does. No one gets it.
No one gets it, Klemmer. No one.
When he says send tweets.
Tweets. That's the only good part because it's the end.
I don't know why, but it does bring me joy. Like, yeah, he did it
because it's the end. That's why you're happy. That's why you're fucking happy.
No, but Kirk's even said it. Kirk's like, I don't get it either, but I like it. Pisses everyone off, so I'm going to keep leaving them on.
I just don't understand. I don't know if it's bad or good. It's probably bad, but I just don't understand, and I'm often perplexed. But then I hear the send tweet, and I'm happy.
Well, it's funny because the actual Boston Radio Watch Twitter account is pretty good.
Yes, great.
That's why I don't understand.
Yeah. I don't understand. Danny or Chris, do you guys have any more notes before we get to like the end here and like the stuff that, man, it just makes my day?
I had one more note before the end stuff.
Go ahead.
And that's, they all guessed when we could eat inside again. And the latest guess was August. So they were off there. Like, I feel like it was a lot longer than that before we could really eat, like have a normal dinner in a restaurant. And I remember I was in the same boat they were. I remember thinking to myself, like, all right, this is going to be the summer. When the winter comes, I'll be back to work. I remember even thinking that.
Yeah.
And that was not the case.
Oh, no.
I didn't go back to work. Put it this way. I didn't go back to work. I work in a restaurant. I work in the restaurant industry. I didn't go back to work until that mid-September. So we weren't eating inside until then. And then even then, it was still like every other, you were 6 feet apart. Some places bought igloos so you could fucking sit outside. It was nonsense.
So what did you do? So you were out of work for a few months too?
March until that October.
Yeah. What did you do during that time? You were just like
collected my Trump money and my Trump $600 bonus every week that everyone got at the time for being unemployed. Chris, I'm sure you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Cash.
Oh yeah. And then just listen to this podcast and went to the beach. I live right near the beach. That was it.
Same thing. We sound like we had very similar life. And as the summer went on, I got more and more okay with that. And by the end of the summer, I was fine. But man, that May and that June, I had a very hard. I think I also struggle with change. Like I think this is me, but I did not handle it. I honestly didn't handle it well because that's how I handled it. But I took it way too hard. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, Danny. Any other notes before we get into the final kick?
Just a couple little ones. So there was some talk about the meeting with Get Roman or Getro Man. Some callback to some old sponsors. They had a conversation there about how I think $1 million worth of game had also called out, had said Getro Man. And Steve was like, no, they just said it wrong. They weren't like trying to steal anything from us. Kirk was about to go on CCK that afternoon. He was going to make an appearance on that show, RIP. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Crying Blind Mike, speaking of Mike being sensitive, had a great call in this episode. And basically just going through all of Blind Mike's failed YouTube shows at the time. So really cool to see where Mike's come from there.
That was a great caller.
Spinning that off into it was.
Yeah, that was a great
of course,
caller.
he's got his own Patreon,
and
he's doing well with that. So that was pretty good. A lot of Mamma Mia talk in this episode as well.
Yeah, but so Danny, I want to get to it. This is a Danny and Bill Ricker. If no one likes this, I want everyone to know this is a Danny and Bill Ricker production. John, hit it. Danny, go for it. Chris, this is you and Danny now.
All right. Chris Klemmer. I have a game. A game.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Look how happy Danny is. Look at Danny's fucking face.
This is the ultimate Mariah Carey quiz.
Oh, God. Okay.
Are you the ultimate Mariah Carey lamb? We'll test your Mariah Carey knowledge right now. All right, hit the music, John.
The music is going to be playing.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah, so it's in your. All right. So first off, Chris, question number 1: Mariah has more number ones than A, Elvis, B, the Beatles, or C, both.
I'm going to guess because of the questioning, it's C, both.
Incorrect. The answer is A, Elvis. Mariah has a total of 19 number ones. Elvis had 18. The Beatles had 20.
Wow.
You know who would love this? Billboard chart guy is going to love this part, Danny.
That's true. That's a good one. All right. Number 2. Which item of Marilyn Monroe's does Mariah own? A, her baby grand piano. B, her ukulele from Some Like It Hot. C, a famous dress. Or D, one of her portraits.
I'll guess, because it's so specific, B, the ukulele.
Incorrect. It's her baby grand piano.
0 for 2, Klemmer.
That's all right.
I'm not a real lamb.
I guess not.
That's all right. You got 3 more chances here. All right. Number 3. Mariah was born in which part of Long Island? A, Huntington. B, Hempstead. C, Brookhaven. Or D, Deer Park?
It wasn't Deer Park. That's where I lived when I was a kid. I lived there for 7 years. I'm going to guess A.
That is correct. Huntington. All right.
There you go, Klemmer.
Well done. Well done. All right. Over under. Mariah's net worth. $500 million.
It's a lot of money, but I'm going to say the over. The Christmas song does monster now.
Christmas song
ding,
does.
Ding, 510 million.
Oh,
I heard she gets like 6 to 8 million every Christmas, like just
it's number
without
one
a
every like for like a month every single year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, so finally, since you're a movie guy, this will be the tiebreaker because you're 2-2. Which of the following movies did Mariah Carey not have is she not credited for?
Oh, she's not in. Okay,
she's not in one of these 4 movies.
Okay.
Number 1, Precious. Number 2, the Lego Batman movie. Number 3, The Bachelor. Number 4, Made in Manhattan.
I'm going to go with A. I don't think she was in Precious.
The answer is Made in Manhattan.
Really? That's what I would have thought.
She was in Precious?
Yeah.
She was in Precious?
She was in Lego Batman?
They had a bunch of people.
She's the voice of Mayor McCaskill in
it's
Lego
a great
Batman.
movie. Must watch.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting. All right, Danny. I'm sure you're happy with yourself, Danny. That's all I care about is that you're happy with yourself.
That too.
That was pretty good.
This is why they weeded out this little fuck. They weeded him right out of Twitter. They knew he wasn't their type. They got him right.
Yeah. They saw you coming from a mile away, Klemmer. All right, so guys, let's get to the end of the episode. I think this is everyone's favorite part. If you've listened to the episode, folks, and we strongly encourage you to do if you're going to watch this. I would say top 3 favorite phone call ever in the history of the show was this one. It was so creative. He disguised his voice. No one saw it coming. He got a huge belly laugh from Kirk. Anytime that happens, that's always really good. Blind Mike's daddy, take a bow. This is when I certified you as a legend phone caller. John, can we play it for the people, please?
We can.
Oh, I'm feeling frisky.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hello. Who's this?
Big Mariah fan here, and I just started listening to your podcast, and I love it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Well, what do you like about it specifically, Mariah fan?
Well, I'm a big Blind Mike fan. I had a question for Blind Mike.
Okay.
Yes.
I suspect you don't get the podcast
Mike.
yet, but go ahead.
Mike, what are you getting your mom for Mother's Day?
Smith's Country Cheese, probably.
Really? I have a better idea for you. Why don't you get her 2 tickets to Pound Town?
Dad! You son of a bitch! You old rascal!
Oh my god!
You're a real.
That right there. The
Dude,
second laugh. I
can remember exactly where I was for
Me
that
too.
moment.
I was walking on the beach.
Yeah, I could remember exactly where I was for that moment.
Just
man, there's more.
All-time call. 2 tickets
All
to
time.
Pound Town is just fixed.
Yeah. I mean, he just now if you re-listen to the episode, right before that, Kirk was done. They were finished with calls. This is about 2 hours and 52 minutes in. And Kirk goes, Steve, what do you think? And Steve's like, well, the phone lines are still totally full. Kirk goes, you know what? I'm feeling frisky today. I think, John, you caught like the tail end of it.
Yeah,
He goes, let's just take 1 or 2 more. And that was the last phone call he took. So we almost didn't get that. I'm sure Mike, Blind Mike said would have tried to get in the next day too. But that's a very specific joke. You almost have to get through that day. So that's Klemmer, Danny, thoughts? Like what was your favorite?
Just the last 10 minutes of this show is all time. Because you have
All
the Blind Mike's Daddy, and we'll talk about the last part, which came after the donkey noise. Like that was so this last 10 minutes was almost like you have a really good meal and it comes out with a fantastic dessert. And that's kind of what this was.
Yeah. Danny?
There's always that moment where you're like, and Chris sort of referenced it earlier, you're like, the episode's about to end.
It's over.
Fuck, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and listen to this again, or am I going to have to go find some other thing to listen to or whatever? And then you just kind of get that little extra second wind, and then it catapults into something else. And because remember, this is pre-YouTube, as Dave mentioned, so it was always fun to look at the amount of time left, and you're like, all right, because YouTube, you never know, it could end any time, really. But when you see, hey, there's still 45 minutes left, and he's thanking the sponsors and the guests, what the fuck happens? And there's
what happens?
Some little hook that draws them back in, and then everybody keeps going, and you're like, fuck yes, 45 minutes, let's go.
Yeah. So Chris, go ahead, break down what happens, because you're kind of involved here at this point. I loved Chris, you're right. The donkey noise comes, and then it's hold on, wait, they're back? Go ahead.
So the show's over, you think the show's over, and then all of a sudden they come back in. I think it's only the second time at that point they had come back in. The one time was just an apology. Years later, I was in the studio and after Ray Liotta died, and we came back and did another 40 minutes, which was I think my second to last appearance before I got the Barstool job. So it's very rare, as any Mana fan knows, that you hear the donkey noise and you get extra. It's very rare. They come back in and Kirk's Lambily has uncovered this video of Matt Carano, and you hear Kirk's reaction seeing the eggs dance and song almost in real time, and he can't contain himself. He's giggling like a madman. Mike can't see the video, so Mike's just confused. Yeah. It is just a great circus of just bizarre. And then they call Carano. The whole thing is just wild. The video to this day still makes me laugh. Carano, I thought, was a really good sport about it. He still
100%.
You can still bust his balls. He doesn't care. He's like, it was goofy. It only meant no. I didn't think anyone was going to see it, but they did.
So I learned something. I had no clue it was the Lambily that found this. I guess I put it out of my memory. I thought it was us that found it, Klemmer. I thought a Minifan found it. That was mad at Matt or something like that.
How could they not? That was crazy.
Yeah, that is written.
The fact that a Minifan didn't find that was ridiculous.
Yes, finding out today that it was the goddamn Lambily that went out and found out who Carano was after that, just for saying that Mariah Carey was stupid, is honestly an unbelievable thing to uncover with this episode.
And I will never say who this Minifan was, so I don't care. Everyone can ask me. I'll never say this. A Minifan reached out to me with proof that he actually found that video about a month and a half earlier, and out of respect to Matt, sat on it.
Ooh, Ziggy! Good for you, Ziggy Robinson.
Nope. It's not anything you'd expect. I will never say who it was ever. But that made me laugh because I honestly, You gotta remember me hearing that. I didn't know the eggs video existed. So all of a sudden the show's over, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, I think.
And that's when Matt. And the phone calls when Matt defended you.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
He did.
And,
But the first time they called him, the number was out of service, and they're like, "Oh, the Lambily got him."
That was Matt. Yeah, Matt had horrible service. I would call him. I would get that message all the time whenever I called him. But yeah, they finally got through to him, and they taught. And he was like, "Yeah, I made it." He didn't try to shy away from it. And then I give Matt a lot of credit. So Matt, they asked him, I said, "How do you still stand by your point about adult contemporary music?" And he goes, "Fuck yeah." I was like,
yeah.
Wow, I had to put the balls this guy. And Matt gets a lot of shit, whatever. I give Matt a lot of credit. Matt had his name out there way before I had mine out there. Matt never got all bent out of shape about this thing like I did. Matt had a much better way of handling it initially than I did. That's a fact. It's not even an opinion. That's just a fact. Matt
Agreed. I mean, Chris, to be totally fair, I was like, "Oh, this Quantum Weak Chris guy's a pussy. Like he's gonna let these twinks bully him off online. Like this is crazy, you know." I'm being honest with you.
No, I would have had to, and I told Matt, I'm like, everyone's gonna think that because I know I would probably think that about myself. Because at the end of the day, they're just like, yes, we're Twitter friends or whatever. We hadn't met each other yet. No one knew me. No one knew my situation. I'd tell these basically people I know for 3 months online about my situation. So like, it was very much like, yeah, I would have thought the same thing. And I'm not like, I didn't deactivate my account because I lost my job. But it was just it was
a multitude.
That's the Providence picture of a chicken, or you getting fucked by a chicken, because he fucking stands proudly by that moment.
I did. But TJ made that picture or something.
Yeah, someone made a Photoshop of you, and it was like a chicken fucking you, and
I was fucking a chicken. Yes,
that was the only thing I could remember. And Chris was like, "Hey, can you take that down? It's like I'm looking for a job."
Yeah, I'm like, that needs to be out there. I'm like,
oh, Jesus.
And
came on our episode once, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, a penis head is mad at me. I don't know. I made a gif of him fucking a chicken or something."
Like, is that necessary? Is that
it was a war, boys.
One thing this job teaches you, at least for me, is that you just can't take yourself too seriously. Exactly. And that is like, I like to be the person that doesn't, but it's hard for me to get there. So like, I don't think, even today, I'm in like a Sherlock Holmes, I don't give a fuck. I was dressed as the Grinch. I don't give a fuck anymore. And I'm so much happier to take a weight off my shoulders. I'm like, I'll do whatever. It's fun. It's content. It's funny. And you know what? No one cares as much as you do. No one gives a fuck as much as you do. They're there for the laugh and they move on the rest of their lives. You're the one who fixates on it. And that's for me, that was a Chris issue. I had to fix that myself. But that takes me a while to get around to that. And that's, it took me a while, and I'm not perfect now by any stretch, but you have to learn how to do that. And for me, that was a really hard learning curve, and it's never more evident than honestly this episode.
So Kirk asked me on today's show. I was on today's show, and he asked me if Carano was going to be on, and I kind of laughed at him. I said, "He goes, did you even reach out?" He actually asked me seriously. I go, "Kirk, he wouldn't do anything for you for the show for like Cullen. Like, what's the point of us reaching out? He's not going to say yes to us because when I told him that you were coming on, do you think there's ever a world, there's every way?" And then Kirk gave Matt credit. He said he's the one guy who's never come back. Like he went away from the world, and he's never once like tried to like. I reached out to him. Kirk's like, I reached out to him and he told me no, So do you think there's ever a world where he would be able to laugh at himself with this stuff, come on something like this and relive something like that? Like, I just feel like he was more playful, or is he just totally going away from the world's content? Like when he was doing Rome, did he know that they were like commenting on Rome? I guess is what I would ask.
Yeah, he knew that.
Okay.
I don't.
I don't want you to speak for him. So
no, it's hard because like. It's just different philosophies on stuff. I think Matt and I just look at the world a little bit differently. Look at the world very similarly and in some ways very differently. Would Matt ever? I don't know. I think Matt's a pretty principled guy, and Matt believes, and I can understand it to some extent. He's like, oh, like these people shit on me. Why do I want to? And I feel like Matt. I'm speaking for Matt here, and maybe I'm way off.
Yeah, you are.
Matt probably thinks. Matt may think, oh, I did a lot to help the show, and maybe he doesn't. And maybe the line is gray sometimes between humor and Kirk's really mad at you, or the fans are really mad at you. or whatever. Like sometimes it can get muddy there. And I don't know if
he can get past it.
Yeah, Matt's very organized, very detailed. He's very talented with music stuff. And I was always kind of the one who was always more playful, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
That was just our dynamic. And that's so like I don't know. I would guess no. But I also like in this maybe this answers better than anything else. I knew I was doing this show. I never even thought to ask Matt to come.
Thought to ask him. Yeah.
It didn't even like it honestly didn't even like cross my mind because I honestly didn't even think about it because I think subconsciously I'm like, oh, he'd say no, or I don't want to put him in a weird spot where he felt obligated to do something he didn't want to do as a favor to me.
What even is that? What even is Quantum Kirk? Because that's a good, does he even know what Quantum Kirk is? Is he that?
Probably.
I did message you guys both when I actually kind of asked you guys permission for the name.
Yes.
So and he responded to that little three-way. Well,
no, that's a good answer.
Oh, the devil's three-way, Danny, huh?
But no, he did. He didn't say much, but he was just like, cool. Go for it, man.
He is like I know it's like I think hopefully Kirk at least respects that. He's like he's not trying to reach on.
No, Kirk talked nice about him today with that. Yeah.
And we recently covered his exit from Jerry's show too, and same thing. Say what you want about the whole thing with Turtle Boy and whatever, but he stood on his principle, and Jerry basically said, "Look, fine, I won't have Turtle Boy anymore. Will you stay?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "I can't trust you, Jerry." And then he's gone, and he's been gone from that world ever since. So
yes,
look, the guy stands on his laurels one way or the other.
I think, and I told him this before. I'm like, I think Matt is very talented. Matt can do a lot of things really well. I don't know if topical or a daily show on a comedy show on Barstool is the best fit, maybe, but I don't know. I think there definitely is a path for content. I always thought this was like this might not be the best world for him, but I also I'm wrong all the time, and like so who am I to say anything? So I agree. I don't know. I did not even consider asking him to come out.
At the same time, there's the guy that wrote "Rape and Eat My Eggs." So
so he's very funny. Like
that's what I mean.
Funny, but I like Matt if Matt has time to sit and think about it and write a song, it is phenomenal, and it is one of the best in the business, like in a parody song business, if that is a business. But he's really good. He does really great work. I think I don't know. I
think if Matt Carano showed up at a live show and did Rape, I think he'd be shocked at the pop that he would get. Put it that way.
I think so.
I think he'd be shocked at the pop that he would get.
But I think there's also something he said for kind of like turning the page and moving on to something else.
Oh yeah, if he doesn't want anything to do with it, he doesn't want anything to do with it.
Maybe like 20 years from now.
We all have stuff I'm sure we did in the past that we used to do that we just don't do anymore because we just aren't interested in anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
It's pretty normal. Like, you just move on to different things. I think he's just moving on to different things, and that's why I wouldn't ask. Like, he's never once asked me, "Oh, hey, can you put in a good word for?" He wouldn't. He doesn't do that.
Yeah, I quit professional air guitar about 3-4 years ago. Just put it behind me.
Yeah.
Jesus, Danny. Jesus.
I will say just one quick. Can I just have one quick flashback? And just I think this just really encapsulates the fun of Quantum Week. I'll never forget when you guys were talking about Toto. Of course, Matt Carano's like favorite band.
Right.
Love Toto. And when you made fun of the drummer from dying for pesticides.
Oh yeah, so fucking dude.
Mad. And I think he was like legitimately mad at you for like weeks, right? Like, didn't you stop the show for like a month?
No, we kept doing it, but he was mad at me for a month. Like he was so mad. He would get mad, and like that's the thing. Like,
and you're like, the guy died from pesticides? What? Not all the drugs he was doing?
Like, he didn't think that the guy was obviously hooked on, all kinds of drugs.
That was probably the crack, the smack, the cocaine.
Right? Yeah. There's him mowing his lawn.
No, but, it was Scott's turf builder.
But that was the fun dynamic that we had, and then the other thing too is. And I know this for myself. Like I'm big on the camaraderie. Like that's what I love here at the office. I love whenever we're all doing stuff together. That's my whole thing. And so I think people might roll their eyes a little bit at it sometimes in the office, but that's what I like doing. I like being with the boys and doing all that stuff. And I think Matt enjoyed like after the show, we just sit and shoot the shit for like an hour. So we finished recording Quantum Week and we talked for like 2 hours because we were friends and it was fun. And I think he liked that. Where I know for me, like when you do Kirk's show's over, he leaves, and I understand why he does because. it's probably
It's the
best to
weirdest shit
separate.
in the world. The whole walking in and the show starts and sits. It's weird. It's fucking weird.
Listen,
weird,
Mick,
it
go
makes
online
sense,
today. Go online today. Mick let the camera run, and he shows me and Kirk getting up today. And John, it's like I can't believe Mick let it run. Like you actually see it in all its glory. You actually see it in all its glory.
He always,
yeah.
Kirk's credit, he always thanks you.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then he leaves. And I get it. Like if you, like I couldn't do, like if you get too close with someone, then how are you gonna like shit on them, or how are you gonna like
agree.
kind of do what you need to do to make Kirk show run? So I completely get it. I was never. I think I just said this last time I was in with him. I was never entirely comfortable with that. Like I always felt like removed because I want to just hang out with the guys. I mean, you guys know when I went to Maine, I'm like, let's just go have a drink.
Let's go.
I like that. And I'm, I understand why Kirk's like, oh, that's my business life. And then I have my, my real life with my real friends, like Andy Nolan. I'm sure there's a reason Andy Nolan's never been on the show. And yet, and I get that, that's so that to me, we're here. I feel like I'm doing content with my friends, and it's like a much easier for me personally. But I need that. And I think Carano needed someone to, after the podcast, sit and talk with him for an hour and a half, and I enjoyed it. And I think that made it easier for him. But when he doesn't have that camaraderie after, I think he felt kind of lost. I'm putting words in his mouth entirely, but that's just the vibe I got.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. All right, Danny, anything else? John, anything else?
Sure. I'll give you because short content's such a big thing now. Give me your 30 seconds on the producer debacle that's going on right now.
Yes. Good job, John.
I'll say this. I don't trust a word Gus says. Gus says completely.
You cut it right there. I'll cut it right
I don't believe him. And I don't believe him at all. And I don't know. And I like the guy. I've met the guy. I like the guy. I was rooting for the guy. I was hoping he'd get hired. I was rooting for him. I'm very disappointed about the lies. I just don't understand why. Here's my thing with it. When I was in my previous life doing sales, if I said, hey, this project has to get done by a certain time, and someone's like, oh man, Chris, like 2 days later, like I'm working on this, things are coming up, things are kind of fucked up, there's going to be a delay. No problem. You communicate that with me. My whole thing was, if the deadline comes and you don't have it ready, or you have like a sloppy product, I know you waited until the last minute to do it. And that to me is a distrust. That's like, and then you start lying about it. Like there's some weird deception stuff.
It's fear causing them to lie. That's bad.
That's a
pathological liar. Like that's what a pathological. They take the easy route by saying a white lie, and a white lie. Like now we have people out in the streets checking charger prices and dates, and like that's what they do because they want to prove you wrong, dude. So if you lie, and like trust me, every Minifan thinks I'm a liar, but it's like. This is what I know exactly. This is what a pathological does. Like, it's like that's what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I learned pretty quick. You don't lie in Kirk Minahan show because
that's the craziest part.
You have thousands of people who are find the truth. So like I try. I don't lie. Honestly, I'm not smart enough to lie. So if I do like Pick Central, I do Barstool Radio, I'm not gonna lie because I can't keep my truth. How do you keep it all straight? Like how do you remember the lies? And like I also like why lie?
Why lie?
Well, like what happened to Mick today? That when he said he had that clip and he didn't, it's just like that's where you can't lie. It's you got to be honest up front. Oh, you're not.
Like I just fucked up. Yeah, I'm not good at this or whatever. Like just don't lie.
I'll defend Gus for a second before we go.
Go.
Okay, so I don't want to call him a pathological liar because I don't know him. I don't know him that well. I think that's something that has to be kind of diagnosed. And I do understand very much him feeling nervous and feeling like he always has to say the right thing, and that leads to lies. And I really hope it's that, and he can calm his nerves and kind of do it. But like right now, as a listener, it's even frustrating. I was frustrated last night listening to the show, like on my way home. I'm like, I don't believe this guy. I don't like hearing people like lie. It's a weird lie to tell. Just be honest. It was very frustrating hearing especially Gus's explanation of what happened because I didn't believe it. He never really gave clear answers. Justin's like, can you tell us when the file was created? And he's like, I don't. It's like, what the fuck, man?
Spoiler alert, Chris. He gets caught in a good one today. He gets caught in a good one.
I'm gonna. The second we're done, I'm gonna go home and on my way home and listen to it. But I'm as down on Gus as I've been since he was fired off of Kirk and off. So
I said to Kirk today, you have a guy who's fired from Barstool and a guy fired off Kirk and off as your two producers. And because someone tweeted it out. Someone tweeted that out. That wasn't a Daver. So someone tweeted that out. He laughed. He goes, well, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I kind of deserve what I'm getting right now. So yeah,
I do think Coleman will figure it out. He's a good kid. He's gonna.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know that when you hire a young kid. I think that, and I felt like
he's never managed anybody. He's never managed anybody.
Person, I work with him for a year here. I believed his answers yesterday.
And the steps he's taken that I've seen personally to try and fix the situation has been what I would have done. So it's like, okay, well, you did something wrong. Now you're in like, this is a 3 to 4 month. What happens after this? That, trust me, these people will be watching. So it's like, let's see if you stay on the track. You know, it's
yeah. I mean, everyone. I mean, I'm sure every Minute fan was like me yesterday listening. I mean, like, I don't believe
frustrated. Yeah.
And like, people looking up the Chargers. I heard that Chargers story. I'm like, that's bullshit. You're telling me it came
bullshit.
6 hours during Christmas, their busiest time of the year, a Charger magically appears that you got it in the morning. And like, why don't you go and
get iPad?
And how did you not? The last day he was in work was Friday, December 22nd. So you need your charger for 5 days.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
And I know he says he has multiple computers, but shouldn't he have been working on this? And then what was he doing? You know what I like? Dave does this with Stu. I like to see an itinerary of what he did the week he was in Chicago. And maybe it's tough to kind of go back and retroactively do that. But like, what were you doing that week? Because you obviously weren't working on this. And if you were working on this, I think Cullinane said it. That was a crazy waste of time. If you're just like listening to old shit, like, what do you like? I don't understand.
Yeah.
None of it made sense. It's very frustrating.
None of it made sense.
And I will say that the Papagenos thing. So Kirk's brought that up a couple times. You know, inside info. I happen to be there. That leaked video was only the tip of the iceberg. No, and I actually tried to, and Gus was sitting next to Kirk trying to, talk about, he's so excited about the best of, and he's going, I've got 77 clips. And Kirk's asking these questions. He doesn't really have answers. And this is just chilling in Papagenos with, we didn't think any cameras on. And he was talking about, I'm going to try to interweave themes. And I tried to throw him a lifeline. I'm like, you mean you're going to have one that's like callers, one that's like enemies, one that's guests? He's like, no, not that. And he just went back into this other old, like, and then just the one he just kept bringing up again and again. I don't remember which one it was now. And it's like, but this was weeks ago. And it's like, it seemed like he was at least, fronting this, face of confidence that, hey, I'm like 2/3 done with this thing. It was just weird.
I'm just disappointed. So maybe I said, obviously Kirk even, I know I haven't listened because I'm telling these guys, I think before we started, like I usually listen on my way in. But the video was on private for a while, and I'm like, all right.
Oh, Mickey. Mickey.
I haven't listened to a second of it, but I saw some clips, I saw some quotes, and Kirk sounded like Gus is suspended next week for tweeting, and then he said, I don't know if he'll be back. I agree with Kirk there a lot, actually, and I sometimes Kirk does fall off the handle, and sometimes I'm probably too sensitive, but when we both agree on something, there's probably a chance there's probably some truth in it, and like I think that. I don't know. He would need, if it was me, if I was Kirk, he'd need to win me back somehow. So
that's what he says.
Something. Like I would need like a written plan of what
how you're going to spend each day. Game plan he's held accountable to,
Yes.
Yeah.
I need proof and I need a plan of action that you're going to follow. And if you don't follow, it's kind of like putting someone on a performance.
Exactly. Here's
what you're going to do. Yeah. And if at any point you fall short of this, you're fired. And also, yes, you have 2 weeks off. He better be making fucking, the greatest movie you've ever seen. Killers of the Flower Moon. You better come back with it. And he goes in.
I said the suspension, and we'll end it with this, but I said the suspension thing was kind of weird to me to kind of push them away from making content, where I think I would have locked them in the studio living together. And so I've been like, make as much I want 15 hours of content out of this.
I think he doesn't. I don't want to speak for
I know
Kirk,
he doesn't want.
If it was me, I don't want to fucking see your face. I can handle almost as a someone I work with. I can handle almost anything. But how can you keep someone on that you don't trust? That to me is the biggest thing in the world. Whether it be a relationship, friendship, anything, you have to trust the person. And if they're lying all the time, where's that?
All right, boys, I got to go to this basketball game. As we know, Klemmer, big basketball fan. Me and you.
That's right. So you're skipping this show to go to a game. Just saying.
I just did an hour and 15 minutes, Klemmer. Leave me alone. Come on.
I don't know, Daver. I don't know. Where's your commitment?
Yeah. All right. No, guys. Hey, Chris. Honestly, thanks for your time. appreciate you coming on. This was fun. This is a great episode. Everyone, please go back and listen. Happy New Year to you guys. Danny, John, thanks a lot.
Thanks
for coming on, Chris. Thanks, guys.
I was standing in the kitchen and your back was facing me. 9 a.m. it was breakfast time for the Carano Gomez family. As I shuffled towards the fridge door for a meal score, you turned and said to me, if you think I'm gonna eat what you're cooking, mister, you cook crazy. When we said our vows, you promised me you would love me forever. You promised to be faithful when I said I do. That meant you had to eat my scrambled eggs for breakfast too. I know you think cappuccino for breakfast is a health best, a nutritional building block to feeling your best. This ain't a request, I want you to sit here at our table and get ready for some protein. I mean the kind you find in eggs, no need to be obscene. When we said our vows, you promised me you would love me forever. You promised to be faithful when I said I do. That meant you had to eat my scrambled eggs for breakfast too. When we said our vows, you promised me you would love